There is a sealed envelope in my mother's handwriting that my lawyer will not let me open until the reading of the will is finished. He keeps saying the same sentence. Sienna, whatever is in there, it was written 11 years ago. Read it only when you're sitting down. I have run 3 divisions of a logistics company across 2 continents. I have never once needed to sit down for anything. But something in the way he says it makes my hands go cold, and I still haven't opened it. I want to tell you why, and I want to tell you what I found out only after it was far too late to fix. 11 years ago, I was 29, and Julian was on one knee on the porch of the house his grandfather built, holding a ring that had been in his family since before either of our grandmothers were born. Sienna, I've watched you build spreadsheets that run better than most marriages. Build one with me in it, I laughed, because it was funny and because I was terrified. 2 days earlier, I had been told I was the leading internal candidate for regional director. My mother had just been diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia, and my younger sister Marisol had looked at me across our kitchen table and said the words that would define the next decade of my life. Someone has to stay close to Mom. It can't be me, Sienna. You know it can't be me. I need time, I told Julian. Not because I don't love you. Because everything is happening at once. Everything is always happening at once, he said. That's what a life is. I didn't say yes that night, I said soon. Marisol found me on the porch after he'd gone. She always found me right after the hardest moments, like she had a sense for them. You did the right thing, she said. Julian's sweet, Sienna, but sweet doesn't keep Mom out of a state facility. You're the one who can actually fix this. I wanted so badly to believe her, because believing her meant I hadn't just done something unforgivable to a good man for no reason at all. I'm scared I just lost him for nothing, I said. You didn't lose him for nothing, Marisol said. You lost him for Mom. There's a difference. I would replay that sentence so many times over the next 11 years that I stopped, noticing how strange it was that she'd had it ready before I even asked. 6 weeks later, Julian sent one final message. Not a call, a message, forwarded to me through a mutual friend because he said I hadn't been answering him directly. It said he understood. He wasn't angry. And he hoped the promotion and his mother's care both went well. It didn't sound like him. Julian used to write me 4-paragraph texts about the smell of rain. This was 6 flat sentences. I told myself grief does strange things to a person's voice. I had no idea yet how right and how wrong that thought was. For 4 years, I built my career and drove my mother to specialists on weekends. Marisol handled the emotional side, she said, meaning she visited on Sundays and cried in front of relatives while I filled out the paperwork. That kept our mother in her own house, instead of a facility. Every time I got close to slowing down, a vacation, a second date that felt like it might matter, Marisol had a new crisis ready. A fall, a missed medication, a doctor who really needed to speak to the family. And by family, they mean you, Sienna. You're the one with power of attorney. At a work conference in her second year as regional director, my closest friend from college, Priya, mentioned she'd run into Julian at an airport. He's engaged, she said carefully, watching my face. Sienna, he asked about you. He asked if you were happy. Tell him I am, I said, and meant it mostly. You don't sound like someone who's happy, Priya said. You sound like someone reciting a line. Maybe those are the same thing by now. 2 years after that, I saw the wedding photos myself. Julian, a woman named Reina, a small backyard, ceremony with string lights and his grandfather's porch visible in the background. He looked lighter than I remembered him, lighter than I had ever managed to look in any photo of myself from that entire decade. Marisol saw me looking at my phone too long. Don't do that to yourself, she said. You have a corner office. He has a mortgage and a used Honda. You won, Sienna. Then why does winning feel like standing outside a house I used to live in? Because you're comparing his life to yours, she said, instead of just living yours. At 36, I went to a fertility specialist. Quietly, telling no one but Priya. The doctor was kind and precise in the way people are when they're about to tell you something you don't want measured. Your numbers are still workable, Sienna. But the window isn't what it was 5 years ago. If children are something you actually want, the timeline is shorter. Then your calendar seems to think. I told her I'd think about it. She told me gently that I'd said the same thing 3 years earlier, in that same chair. I dated after that. Carefully at first, then almost mechanically. A man named Theo, 44, divorced, 2 kids already, told me on our 3rd date, You're impressive on paper, Sienna. I just can't find anyone behind the paper. I didn't argue with him. I wasn't sure he was wrong. Another man, gentler, asked me over dinner what I did on weekends when I wasn't working. I opened my mouth to answer and realized, for the first time in longer than I wanted to admit, that I didn't have an answer. Not one that wasn't about my mother or Marisol's next crisis, or a meeting that could technically have waited. My mother's decline accelerated the year I turned 40. Marisol was overseas for work, phrase she used more and more as the disease progressed, and I moved into the guest room of my mother's house for what became the final 8 months. In her clearer moments, near the end, she would look at me and say the same thing, almost word for word, as if it were the one sentence she'd protected from the disease. You gave up too much for me, Sienna. I never asked you to. I told her every time that I'd chosen it freely. I believed that, right up until the reading of the will. The lawyer read the will on a Tuesday. The house split evenly. The savings split evenly. And then a sealed envelope, addressed to me in my mother's handwriting, dated 11 years earlier, the same autumn Julian proposed on that porch. The lawyer said she'd left explicit instructions. I was not to open it in front of anyone. I was to read it sitting down. I opened it in my car in the parking lot outside his office, and I understood, in the space of 4 handwritten paragraphs, that my mother had known something for 11 years that she had been too afraid, or too loyal to Marisol, to say to my face while she was still lucid enough to watch me react. She had found out, accidentally, from a slip Marisol made, during a visit that same autumn, that Marisol had never forwarded a single one of the messages Julian sent me directly in the 6 weeks after that porch proposal. Julian hadn't gone quiet. He had written to me nearly every week, first hopeful, then confused, then hurt that I wasn't answering at all. Marisol had intercepted every one of them from my old shared email account, the one only she still had the password, to from when we'd set it up together as teenagers. The final message, the flat 6-sentence one forwarded through a mutual friend. Marisol had written that one herself, using an account she'd made in Julian's name, timed exactly to arrive the week I was deciding whether to chase him or let him go. My mother had found the drafts folder by accident, still logged in on a shared family computer, dated and time-stamped, undeniable. She had confronted Marisol once. Marisol had cried, said she'd been terrified of losing me to a marriage the way she'd already lost our father to his second family, and begged our mother never to tell me, because by then, she said, it was too late to undo it anyway. My mother's letter ended with the sentence she never got to say to me in person, the one the disease eventually took from her before I could ask her why. I let you believe you chose all of this alone. You didn't. Someone chose a great deal of it for you, out of a fear she never let herself say out loud. I'm sorry it took me this long, and this letter, to finally give you back the truth you were owed the whole time. I sat in that parking lot for 40 minutes, not crying. Past that somehow. Doing math instead. 11 years. Every crisis that arrived exactly when I got close to slowing down. Every sentence Marisol had ready before I'd even finished asking my question. I thought about calling her right then. I didn't. I'm still not sure I will. What I know now is this. I didn't choose a slow, careful abandonment of my own life in favor of loyalty to my mother. Some of it, yes. That part was real, and I'd choose it again. But some of it was engineered, sentence by sentence, by someone who was supposed to be standing next to me instead of quietly steering me. Julian didn't walk away from a woman who chose ambition over him. He walked away from a woman who never got the chance to answer him at all. I still have the ring he offered me. He mailed it back years later, with no note, care of the mutual friend. Once he must have realized I was never going to send it back myself. I keep it in the same drawer as my mother's letter. Some nights I take both of them out and just look at them side by side. The porch and the parking lot, 11 years apart, and I think about how much of what I called my own decision was never entirely mine at all. If someone in your life has a sentence ready before you've even finished asking your question, pay attention to that. Sometimes the person closest to you isn't holding you back by accident.